friends. It's really good to see you guys today. I am Melissa, and I am a grieving mother. And 4 years ago, we lost our two youngest children, Noah and Sophia. So for the last 4 years has been heavy, deep grief for me and my family. And I am working on the videos now, talking a lot about the impacts of our grief, whether it was physical, emotional, spiritual, and now I'm kind of talking a lot about relational impacts and the relationships that we have and how they're different and actually pretty awkward and weird. And I was thinking actually about work and how work is weird in grief. It is so weird. Can anybody else relate to that? That's in grief, how weird work is. You do what you're supposed to do, but in fact, you're just not even there, And I had the beautiful privilege of being a stay-at-home mom for a little over 10 years. So when Noah and Sophia were killed, I was a stay-at-home mom at that time. And after the 1 year after their funeral, a friend and an acquaintance actually at my church owns a small business and needed some help. And so, like I think a lot of us do in grief, let me just get out of the house. Let me go work, earn an income, and the house is so quiet. Everything was so quiet. The other two kids are teenagers in school all day. So, I felt like, let me get out of this house, go work, be productive, and earn some money, right? But when I go to work, I just wasn't there. I really just wasn't there. And when, and my husband has shared his experience with me working and just how odd it is at work now, and especially because we are not in the jobs that we were in, or he is not, when our children were killed. So that adds just a different type of dynamic to it. You know what I'm trying to say? If you have a new job in grief, it's like, where do you even begin to start that all over again? Do you mention it in the interview process, or do you wait and get through the interview, get hired, and then tell them, hey, you know what? Actually, by the way, yeah, questions that I don't think there actually is a right or wrong. And my husband has done it both ways. He's been through several jobs in grief, and he has done it both ways. And sometimes he's even recognized in the interview locally, because unfortunately, a crime, this type of crime, of course, was on the news. So it's weird dynamics, really weird, odd dynamics. Sorry, I do have my notes, friends. That's my grief brain. But yeah, my brain is foggy, and my brain is foggy at work. Can anybody else relate to that? Is your brain foggy at work in grief? I know I'm tired. I'm on autopilot most of the time at work. I did quit my job a month ago. I worked it for about 3 years. Oh, and I'm sure any of you, if you're a boss or a supervisor listening or watching this, I'm sure you probably are like, oh, you might be cringing just to think about the fact that some of your employees that are grieving, or their brains are foggy and they're spaced out most of the time. This is no way in like a negative thing. It just is. It's just how I feel, at least as an employee, and my husband, So work was weird. Everything is weird. Yeah. It's like, why would we not think that the deaths of our children would affect work too? Yeah, they do. They do. Most of us spend 40 hours or more at work a week, right? So our jobs are going to be anything but business as usual. That's for sure. I mean, that is just for sure. Grief is exhausting. If there's probably anything you're getting out of my videos, it's definitely, I'm sure, got to be that one, because I think I mention it almost on every video. Grief is exhausting. We're tired. Most of us, we wake up fatigued, And then we just trudging through, trying to make it through the day, and we're tired and we're exhausted, just doing the best we can. And we're trying to tackle these complex work tasks that before grief we seem to do with some ease, but not in grief. Not in grief. We desperately were trying to keep up with the expectations that were placed upon us and our own to-do list. We face people and coworkers every day. Okay? Some of them smile, some of us pat us on the back, some of us give us little rubs, some ask how we're doing. Some are trying to be sensitive and supportive, right? And then you have others some that just avoid eye contact. They don't know what to say, and they're freaking terrified that they might make things worse somehow. I just sense that from coworkers. And then some of the coworkers try to cheer us up, which is sometimes weird. But everyone senses the huge change, especially when it's the same job you go back into. Everybody there is already sensing the huge change within us. The whole thing is, well, awkward. Yeah, it's awkward. And then there's our bosses and supervisors. Oh my gosh, don't get me started on some of those, Oh, but the positive ones, some are compassionate, and their primary concern is for us and our well-being, and the Lord gave me that in my boss that I had. He gave me that in Lexi, and she was a godsend for me these last 3 years in my grief, and she was compassionate and she was caring and she was very tolerant in a way I've never seen a boss be for the hours and the days that I needed to work, because grief really is so consuming. And for me, it was very, very physically hard to do past even 5 hours. Like I was bone weary, exhausted, and like just needed to come home, and yeah, it was a beautiful blessing to have her as my boss, and the freedom that I had in that job, and no micromanagement, and I spent a lot of time driving as well, and I got to spend so much time with worship music and pouring my heart out to the Lord in my grief. And yeah, there was a lot of blessings that came out of that job that I had, for the last 3 years. It just became physically too much for me. Yeah. But Lexi definitely listened, and she definitely treated me like a human being. So some of us are really blessed for that, and we get those types of bosses and supervisors. I think it's pretty few and far between, though. If I were to be really honest, I think it's pretty few and far between. Others are just much more concerned about the job, the effect on the bottom line, and our work performance. So, and then especially if they don't know, oh my goodness. And then some bosses, especially when they're much younger than us, they're so wrapped up in their own lives, that they act like as if nothing has happened. And I had a few of those too, not actual bosses, but a few coworkers, and it was just odd, but they were wrapped up so much in their own lives that they were just acting like as if nothing happened, or they didn't know, kind of a thing, So, honestly, they haven't most likely lost a child. So, and like I said with my last video, grief is no place. Grief is a place no one knows until you're there. And you just can't imagine it. So, I noticed that some bosses and coworkers, they naturally think we're just going to rebound out of this somehow. If they just give us 6 months, 9 months, we'll be good to go. We'll be back to our old work performance and work level. Yeah, that don't work either. And so we begin to feel the squeeze of the job requirements and expectations. And I know I was. Even though, like I said, I had a very considerate, compassionate boss, I still felt very greatly the squeeze of those requirements of the job and the demand of the job. And I do care to do a good job. And my grief, it just wasn't able to do a good job a lot of the days, especially towards the end. My own desire to work hard, and like I just said, it adds to my burden. So work is very tough, you guys, when we're grieving. It is. So how can we do this? Is it possible to be somewhat honest and still perform our functions adequately? I wonder. I was able to experience that with Lexi. I was able to be honest with her, and she worked with me and helped me reduce my hours and allowed me to go to a part-time status. And yeah, so that was very helpful. But I think back on my other jobs and my previous bosses, no, I don't think I could have shared my grief and the reality of my grief and how it makes me feel and still be able to keep my job. So I wonder, or another question is, or should we shut our emotions down at work and compartmentalize our loss somehow? That doesn't feel good to me. Is there a balance here? What's healthy? We're all different. All of our losses are unique. Yeah. Our talents, abilities, and jobs, they're all very diverse. So we have different coworkers, we got different supervisors and bosses. So basically, in other words, there isn't no cut and dried, works every time, one size fits all approach that's going to work for us in our jobs. I'm sorry, friends. Yeah, there's just not a straightforward answer for this. That's why we got to stick together. Navigate this grief journey together. There are a few things that might help. I guess really the one thing I was kind of thinking of was, like I said, I was able to talk to Lexi and I was able to share with her how my grief was affecting me, how tired I get, how exhausted I get, how hard it is for my mind to stay truly on task after 11 a.m. kind of a thing, especially because we started at 5:30 in the morning. So, by 11 a.m., I was pretty much done for the workday, but I can see that many of us have bosses and supervisors that would not be realistic to do that. And none of us got that magic money tree in the backyard, So, yeah, mortgages and rent need to be paid, food, so on, so forth, I wanted to read you real quick. I thought this was so interesting. This was an example from a grieving father. And this is what he said that he did to inform his coworkers about how he was doing and what he expected from them. Now, just a little disclaimer, it does seem a little cheesy, but I think if you listen between the words, listen between the lines. So he said, as you know, my son Ethan died last week. We're devastated. I know you're probably wondering what you can say or do to be supportive. Just be aware that I'm hurting, no matter how I might appear. Please don't ask me how I'm doing during work, or I'll never make it through the day. Smile, pat me on the back, or give me a hug. Feel free to call or text me later. I would love to talk about Ethan and share how I'm doing, but would prefer to do that after work hours. I take my job seriously, and I'm thankful to be part of this team, and I will give all that I can to do the best job I can. Now that was interesting. I know a lot of us, we don't speak that way, but I think do you maybe kind of get the hint somewhere in some of that? We can pray for the Lord to give us courage to be able to speak those things to our coworkers and bosses and supervisors that need to know that. I think advocating for ourself and grief is one of the hardest things I've had to do. I can definitely advocate for my children, my husband. I can certainly fight for others. It seems like a lot faster and quicker and with more tenacity than I can for myself. And in grief, being broken and shattered, and then now needing some godly grit to advocate for myself, whether it's at the workplace or even within my family and friends. Life is different now, and work is no exception. So finding a way to grieve, be honest, and still meet job expectations is very challenging. It is. Experiencing work stress during this time of loss and grief is very natural and very common. So maybe you haven't lost someone, you're watching this video, but you yourself have not walked through a heavy loss. But maybe you know some coworkers who have. Maybe you might be thinking, this might explain sometimes why they just space out, or the up and down in their mood swings. Or even one day they perform very well and the next day their performance is poor. Why the consistency doesn't seem to be there. Yeah, maybe they buried their child. Or like us and had to bury two at the same time. We can never truly know the depth of another person's life and story, can we? Can we, friends? Kindness, whether we deserve it or not. No wonder it's God's royal law. Love, grace, to love first, and to do everything in love. Work is weird and awkward now, and so many of us were just trying to find a way to grieve honestly and still work well. I think, I really do. I think that's just a lot. We're just trying to find a way to grieve honestly and work well. But it's hard and it's challenging. So go easy on yourself, friends. Give yourself grace. I'm preaching to the choir. Extend it to each other, because this is very hard. And yet we still have to go out and face people every day to earn a living too. Unfortunately, the world did not stop when Noah and Sophia died. I sure wish it had, but it did not. Well, friends, thank you for joining with me today. It was really good to share my heart with you. And God bless you today, and be well, and I'll see you on the next video.